On the road, in the gym, at a coffee house. No matter where you listen, this is Prevention Perk. I'm Steve Miller with Mid-America PTTC. It's time to perk up our prevention efforts. My guests today are Karie Terhark and Chuck Daugherty. Karie works for the team at Hue Life, inspiring and facilitating change, guided by the values of inclusion, teamwork, and collaboration. Chuck currently serves as the executive director of ACT Missouri, a training and technical assistance provider, and has been advancing in the field of photography for 5 decades. Together, they are advancing the art of PhotoVoice in the prevention field. Today, we'll explore this technique and learn about a recent project they completed with teens in rural Kentucky. Hello, Karie. Hello, Chuck. Welcome to the Prevention Perk.
Hey, Steve.
Well, I'm so excited to have our audience learn about this. You've been sharing a little bit of the project with me. It's fascinating. I want to learn more about both of you and about what PhotoVoice is and the project you worked on recently. But before we get into that, let's hear about your paths to prevention. So let's start with Karie. How did you get into this line of work?
So I think, like a lot of people, by accident, didn't even know that prevention was a thing back in the day. I live in a very rural community here in northern Iowa. I moved here when I was in middle school, graduated here, raised my family here. So I have a lot of connections here in this county. I did a lot of youth development work and youth work through my church for many years. And our county received a drug-free community grant from SAMHSA, and they needed somebody who had connection and had a great rapport with youth. And I was recruited and asked and said, hey, we need somebody who can engage the community partners to support youth and somebody who youth will respond to and have a good connection with. And we want you. And so that's kind of how I got in to prevention, learned a lot in a short amount of time. I think my 3rd or 4th day of work, I went to CADCA mid-year and was completely overwhelmed, but jumped right in and love it.
We're glad you joined the prevention field. Chuck, what about you? How did you get into this work?
I've got to go with Karie and say it was by accident. I started taking photos at age 15, went through high school, taking all the photos for a yearbook, newspaper. Right out of high school, I worked at a daily newspaper as the staff photographer. When I went to college, I went in planning to get a degree in journalism and photography and realized that I liked to eat a whole lot better than photography paid. So I got into social services and got my degree in sociology. My first job was working in prevention at a drop-in center in the town where the college was, running a youth drop-in center, and so it's a lot of prevention with that before it was actually formalized, because it was a long time ago. My first job was in residential care, residential treatment. It was kind of social services. Worked with a lot of kids that were fully 90% there because of their own alcohol and drug use or their parents. And that's what got me into prevention. I started out in treatment because I got certified so I could actually make a difference in their lives and say, this is their problem, let's get them help, as opposed to just move them through the system. From that, I've done treatment, recovery, outreach, to when I got to ACT Missouri as solely substance use prevention, and don't look back, it's been the greatest thing.
You're listening to Prevention Perk. The funder of this project, along with all the other products of the Mid-America PTTC, is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Although funded by SAMHSA, the content of this recording does not necessarily reflect the views of SAMHSA. SAMHSA offers free downloadable publications and tip sheets, as well as mobile apps for youth, teens, and young adults on topics such as substance misuse, common mental health conditions, and coping with disasters and other traumatic events. You'll find a link to these resources in the show notes. So over the years, Chuck, you and I've had this conversation about PhotoVoice and your enthusiasm for it. And there's probably people in the audience that also have heard of the term PhotoVoice and maybe have even incorporated it in some of their efforts. But let's actually unpack this idea. What actually is PhotoVoice?
PhotoVoice started out in 1997 giving power and um, a sense of purpose to folks that had no power in their communities, had no ability to make change to their lives. They're really marginalized. And it started at 1997, I said, with women and domestic violence. And each of those women were given a camera, and they did assignments. They went and took pictures. They came back. They discussed their pictures. And that was the first PhotoVoice. And it was really powerful. The photos were displayed at, I think, the city hall of their community, of their town. But it's usually designed for people with limited power due to poverty, language barriers, race, class, ethnicity, gender, culture. It's a way for people to raise up, make their needs known. So many of those folks are just marginalized and we don't see them. But with a camera, they can show us how they live, where they live, and how they live, and where they live. Oftentimes, they're the folks that are unnoticed in the community and don't have the voice to say, hey, this is a problem. We can facilitate that with PhotoVoice.
It's fascinating. It's kind of an art form in a way, but it's also like a social advocacy medium as well. It's a way to, as you're explaining it, it's a way to really tell a story in a very unique way. This is my life through the lens, but then as you've indicated, then people get a chance to kind of process their experience with taking those pictures. Is that kind of how it ends up in the end?
Exactly. In the olden days, we would send people out with cameras and have taken pictures, get them developed, and then we come in and talk about why did you take that photo? What does that mean to you? What's the message you wanted to get? And besides being able to take the photos, folks have the ability to learn how to give feedback to their peers, how to accept good feedback from their peers, and to be able to talk about it and all strive for a better PhotoVoice story for the community. The good news now is everyone has a camera on their phone. And when we teach the technical aspects of how to take a photo in some of the classes with composition, lighting, we do that digitally too on their phone, what it looks like on your phone and how to use your phone to take a good picture. And so it's really opened up the art form for anyone that has a mobile phone, a cell phone. And it's just made it more available to everyone to do PhotoVoice stories.
Fascinating. Well, Karie, you work at Hue Life, and as we've already introduced, you're really talking about making change, leading collaborations, teamwork, making sure the audience, that could be the community, feels inclusive. How did you see, this blending of the Hue conversation that you all are known for and PhotoVoice? How did that kind of gel together for you all?
Yeah, it's amazing the similarities and really how both PhotoVoice and the Hue conversation in which we teach in our foundational values really are the same, really aligned. Hue conversation is really based on the idea that we all walk through life a little differently. We all have different experiences. We all take in different things. And those different experiences that we have help shape what we think might be possible, help shape the decisions that we make. And when we bring people together, even though they may live in the same community, if they have different experiences, we need a broaden perspective in order to collaborate. We need to understand something that I've not experienced myself. I need to understand something that's happening that I've never had happen to me before. And the whole part of the conversation is understanding not just the uniqueness that people have experiences in, but the uniqueness in the way that people view the world, and the uniqueness that the way that people process information, the way that they communicate through various different forms. And if we can create space and hold a space for people to just listen and ask questions and learn more about each other, that we can be really innovative and creative. And there's really not anything out there that we can't come together to solve. We can find common ground in something. And so when we think about how that happens in the Hue conversation, and just as Chuck talked about, that is exactly what, PhotoVoice is really designed to do, is be able to say, this is through my lens. This is the experience of the things that I walk in. And if you ask me a question about, what are the things that give me comfort in my environment or my community, and I'm showing, rather than saying with words, showing through picture, that we can start to understand where people are and ask questions of clarity, ask questions of feedback, and get used to creating that in a way of a conversation to learn more.
Really a very inclusive practice, it sounds like. Now, Chuck, you're kind of the connector here because PhotoVoice has existed, like you said, since the late 90s, but the relationship between ACT Missouri, yourself, and Karie and Hue Life, how did that come about?
ACT Missouri's worked with Hue Life for going on 4 years, 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I enrolled, I joined some of their workshops, and one of the ones was the MTOP. I don't know what that is.
The Mastery of Technology of Participation.
Thank you. One of them was the Mastery of Technology of Participation. And part of that class was doing a final project using some of the Hue Life methods in something that was important and we were passionate about, and I chose PhotoVoice. And the cohort I was in didn't know a lot about it, but really understood it and liked it, and it's very encouraging to get it going. After I showed it, it was after that that the Hue Life folks and me and ACT Missouri started talking about how we could work together, because they do go together. And all the stuff that Karie said is absolutely right, that we can and let people see it through their lens and really tell a powerful story. Earlier, you talked about a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's the cool thing about PhotoVoice, is that everyone can see a picture and understand a picture without knowing your language, your culture, your community. The picture tells everything, and I don't have to be fluent in your language because we all see the visually.
So it was kind of a seed that was planted during the NTOP experience, and from there, it's kind of evolved into, actually you've created a whole product, if you will, and you've implemented it recently in the state of Kentucky. So, Karie, can you tell us a little bit about how that project kind of, it was a standalone on its own, but PhotoVoice then became incorporated into it? How did that kind of play out?
Yeah, we have been fortunate enough to work with 5 rural communities in Eastern Kentucky who have received money to work on teen pregnancy prevention and really overall health and wellness, improving the health and wellness outcomes of Eastern Kentucky. And if you're familiar with anything about Eastern Kentucky, it's mine country, and they've had a lot of hardships and a lot of health inequities, and face a lot of unique challenges that a lot of the rest of the country doesn't face. And so they have a really high teen pregnancy rate. And one of the things that we were asked to come in and do is really build up leadership skills within the youth of Eastern Kentucky. And we had a cohort of 22 high school juniors and seniors that we worked on with the whole year to really understand what is leadership, and what, if they stay in this part of the country in Eastern Kentucky as adults, what can they do to raise up and to change things that are going on within their communities? And if they leave, what are the leadership skills that they can take with them to do that somewhere else? And really, one of them being a purpose of understanding that even as youth, they have purpose and they have voice, and there are ways that they can share their stories. They don't have to wait to be an adult. They don't have to wait to be in a position of leadership. But there are things and tools that we can teach them that they can pass on and to teach others. And so we had this year-long cohort that was really around leadership development, really based around the idea of having conversation. Right. So our first session was really understanding, how do we understand one another's stories? How do we get to know one another as individuals? Where do we find common ground? And then how do we use a framework to have conversation that opens up my eyes to different perspective? Another part of that is understanding, what does it mean to be an ally or be an advocate? How do I raise up voices of those who are underserved, who don't feel that they have a voice? So we went through a lot of different things throughout the year. Each time we came back to this group and met with them, we gave them another tool, another way to raise their voice. And the last one was PhotoVoice, which for most of the kids was the most impactful, because I think in the very beginning it was this, I can't be a public speaker, right? I'm not going to get up in front. They were so intimidated to get up and talk to other people that they're like, Dad, this is great, but I don't think I can use it. And we got to PhotoVoice, and they had just what Chuck said. I have a camera on my phone. This is accessible to me. I can look through it. I can take a picture, and I can use that conversation framework to tell the story of what this picture means to me.
Well, I'm kind of curious. So here we go. We're in an audio forum, so no one can see any moving pictures or anything. But can you kind of describe maybe some of the images that were captured as a part of this process?
Yeah, we had some really powerful pictures. So we had a couple of different questions that they went out into the community to answer. What are the ways that you relieve stress or find comfort, right? So that was one of the questions that they had. And there was a beautiful picture that one of the students took, and she was sitting on her front porch with a book. And you could just see the writing of the book, and then just kind of her front yard of where she was. And just, you don't have to be a reader, I think, to have feelings for that. And I think that was one of the things that I learned from Chuck when he was there, is that the picture, even if I've not seen that book, even if I've not sat on her porch, I had a feeling of connection to that picture. I understood what she was trying to say, and I could relate in my own way. There was another picture. Again, Kentucky is beautiful. Eastern Kentucky is beautiful. We had another student who had a picture of his long driveway. We had a picture of someone's cabin way back in the hills, and just this serenity that surrounded them. And it was really how they were relieving stress, was just in the environment they had. And I think through that, it made me understand and realize that we have the ability to find peace wherever we are, right? That it's not always about having access to things, but that really finding peace wherever we are. So
that's really cool. So I'm curious. They took these pictures, and it was a part of this whole series, or this body of work that you did. But do the kids get kind of like a takeaway from it? Are these being published in some way so that they not only have their pictures, but the pictures from their other peers that were in the cohort?
Yeah, so actually they're going to do a youth conference coming up at the end, in the middle of the summer here, where they're going to be showcasing their work to recruit the next group of students into the next cohort. So the students that they're inviting in were not part of the original cohort, but we're going to have all of their work on display. We're going to have it be kind of a walk through gallery, as Chuck, talk about with what PhotoVoice really is, and then really to have some conversation around, what do you see yourself doing in the community to raise voices and to tell stories? And so yeah, it will be on display here at the end of the month.
So it'd be kind of a pay it forward experience. We've learned it. We're sharing this with you. We hope you'll go forward and do something that replicates the same experience, but only through your lens. That's really kind of cool. So Chuck, for people that are listening, maybe they're already leading prevention initiatives in their community, and they might be interested in maybe some resources and learning more about how to do PhotoVoice within their already existing prevention efforts. How could they learn more, or where could they go?
To get more information, the Community Toolbox out of the University of Kansas has an excellent program on PhotoVoice and excellent writings and research. and some evaluation even. So I would encourage you to, if you're running a prevention program, to look into PhotoVoice. While it's not an evidence-based program that's identified yet, there's a lot of evaluation, a lot of programming, a lot of talk about it, that it would, I think you could make the argument that it would meet your community's needs. So go on the internet and look at it like we do for everything. If you want to give me a call, I'd be glad to chat it up about with you and talk about it. I'd be glad to talk more PhotoVoice with you and get that going and get it started. Karie can do the same thing with Hue Life, and we'll get together and meet your needs.
One of the things that I really appreciate about having Chuck come in too as well was Chuck brings the expertise and the experience as a photographer. So not even just taking pictures, but the kids really learned a lot about how to take a good picture, right? What are the things that you can do to capture, to make sure that the attention is where your picture needs to go, the editing, kind of those ground level rules or guidelines about taking pictures, and the kids were so engaged and excited to learn that, and so it was really fun, really cool.
As you're describing that, it makes me think that it's even through an adult, but especially through the lens of an adolescent, really kind of understanding how to frame a picture, or how to really look for that shot. It also focuses them in the moment, to really think about the life that they are experiencing, which can be a pretty powerful teaching tool for an individual of any age. But I could see how that could be kind of captivating for an adolescent to kind of like be in the moment in their own life and go, wow, this is my life. And I'm in charge of it with this one little snapshot. I've framed it for history, so to speak. So that's kind of a cool way of thinking about PhotoVoice.
That's kind of a cool thing too with the PhotoVoice now with your cameras is we don't have to send off film to the Walgreens, so you're developing it back 2 weeks later. These kids are able to get a photo today. It was gratifying. It's immediate gratification. I know what I want, and if it's not exactly what I want, I'll try it again right now in the same time, same light, same everything, and can make those changes and really get the photo they want.
Yeah.
One of the cool things that we did the training in Kentucky is after I did the training, we talked about composition and lighting and how to use your camera and lots of technique around photography. Before we went to a break, we said, get your cameras out and talk about some of your favorite pictures. It's just your camera roll now. And they started doing that, and no one went to break. They just stood around their tables and just chatted and talked about their photos and complimented each other and showed all their little brothers, their dogs. It was amazing to see them get really energized and want to talk about pictures, want to talk about them. And the whole room came together. The part of that was definitely because they'd been together all year, but in this medium, it was just fun to see that they didn't take a break.
That's interesting. I think everyone has a story to tell, and most often people want to tell that story. So this is a great way to facilitate that dialogue. You're listening to Prevention Perk. Interested in learning more about PhotoVoice? There are several research papers, case studies, and examples about this art form available on the internet. The Community Toolbox has a great resource complete with examples and a downloadable PowerPoint. And ACT Missouri offers a toolkit to help jumpstart a student PhotoVoice. Links to these resources are in the show notes. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, PhotoVoice helps tell the whole story. So before we get away, I'm curious, is there something that around the adventure of PhotoVoice we haven't talked about? Or maybe about the venture between the two of you that you want to explore a little bit? Is there something that you want to share with the audience before we part ways today? We'll give Karie the first stab at that.
Yeah, I want to say that it was so fun to be able to work with Chuck, and I think even for myself, and we use this for youth, and Chuck, talked about how it started, and it's a great tool to use for anyone. And even I had some really deep self-reflections. I mean, I had an emotional connection to my picture that I hadn't even realized until we sat down and put the story behind it and really kind of understood why I took that picture. What was it that I was drawn to that? And it was super powerful for me. And then to be able to say it out loud to other people and see how other people had connections was amazing. So I am super excited for Chuck and for this PhotoVoice and the expertise that he brings. The things we do at Hue Life. Hue stands for Human Understanding and Engagement. And that's what it's about, understanding humans, about engaging people as our authentic selves, being able to accept and accept. I don't know everything and I haven't experienced everything, and I want to understand and gain a new perspective. And we do a lot of trainings and facilitation at Hue Life that are really based around that, about connecting humans. And it was so cool to bring Chuck in and just another avenue to be able to do that with the PhotoVoice.
Yeah, that's cool. Sounds like it was a rewarding experience for you and for the teams that you've been working with for the past year. Chuck, what about you?
PhotoVoices, in my experience in Missouri and across the United States where I've worked and have done PhotoVoices, it's typically been done with adolescents. And it's usually with a prevention specialist who's an expert at prevention. And I think that ACT Missouri and Hue Life have hit the right mixture now of having the folks that can do facilitation, that can do leadership, that can do conversations, and with my addition of me, have someone with experience with photography and can build it together so we get the whole picture and not just half the skill. Because we're turning out some great, excellent PhotoVoices across the state with that extra piece of facilitators that understand and teach leadership and the connection. I think that's what made Kentucky so successful. I would encourage folks to step out of kids too, and let's do some PhotoVoice around adults. Some of the success has been adults in the workplace, safety in the workplace, prevention in the workplace. It's been used with people coming out of prison or rehabilitation, treatment, and how their lives are different, how their lives have changed, and some of the pitfalls that might surround them. So all of those are excellent ways to do it, and having someone that can facilitate that and do the counseling and do the discussion, along with someone who has some skills on photography that can teach that, I think we can really, really powerful and create some really passionate programming.
Well, I'll be sure and put emails for both of you in the show notes. I'll also put a link to, there is a PhotoVoice website, and then there's also the toolkit that Chuck referenced that's available through the community toolbox at Kansas University. And I'll make sure the audience can get connected with those. What a great opportunity that we've had here. Chuck, you have another thought?
Well, I did want to say too that ACT Missouri has published a PhotoVoice toolkit. So if you get a hold of ACT Missouri, myself, or go to our website, there is a PhotoVoice toolkit there that explains everything about PhotoVoice. It's the model releases, how to set it up, what the sessions need to look like. Pretty much a turnkey program for PhotoVoice that's sitting on our website that, again, download it, use it. If you have questions, give me a call.
We'll be sure and put a link to that as well in the show notes. So thank you both for taking the time out to talk about the project in Kentucky, but also to enlighten us a little bit about what PhotoVoice is. It's been great having the conversation with you.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
And thank you for listening to The Prevention Perk, a podcast from Mid-America PTTC. To learn more about our innovations, visit pttcnetwork.org and look under your PTTC for the Mid-America link. Remember, prevention is better together, and together we are stronger.